Here is my start file, Basic Forms. You can download the exercise file and follow along by clicking on the link below this video. In this tutorial, I want to talk about forms. So what is a form? A form is a database object that enables us to deal with the underlying source tables. So let's have a look at a table, and then let's look at the corresponding form. So if I double click on Table Retailer to open it, this is how it looks like. And just imagine having 100,000 records. That will be overwhelming looking at the table, lots of fields and lots of records. But if I open the corresponding form, instead of viewing all the records in one single screen, I'll be able to see one single record at a time. So if I open Form Retailer by double-clicking, this is the form feeding the same exact table. Any change you do in the form will be communicated to the table and vice versa. In the form, you can navigate the records by using the navigation buttons to the lower left corner. You can add a new record, you can edit or modify a record. Whatever changes you do, this will be reflected automatically on the underlying source table. Let's talk about creating forms. And I'm going to close the form and table, and I want to create a form. And as we learned in previous tutorials, whatever you want to create, you have to go to the Create tab. So I click on the Create tab, and let's assume I want to create a form. We have a group for creating forms. We are talking about three main techniques for creating a form. You can create a form by clicking once on this button. We call it the Form tool. You can create a form by answering a set of questions, and this is called the Form Wizard, or you can create a form and have full control on the design by using the Form Design. And I'll be creating a form by using each one of these techniques. So let's say I want to create a form by using the Form tool, and this form will be using table product as a base. So I have to start selecting the table first when I use the Form tool. Why? Because I don't have any option for selecting fields, for selecting a sorting option, for setting criteria. It's a single click away. So if I click on the Form tool, the form is created. And the form includes all the fields from the underlying source table. It even inherits the name of the table itself, although it's a form, but it inherits the name table product. When you create a form by using this very simple tool called the Form tool, it opens in a special view called the Layout view. And if you look in the lower right corner, you will see the middle button highlighted. That's the Layout view. What does it mean, the Layout view? In Layout view, you can make simple modifications to the design. Like what? Like if you hover over this orange frame, the mouse pointer changes to a double pointing arrow, I can click and drag to resize this field. I can also get rid of this little icon, which is added by default denoting that it's a form. So if I select it, I can hit the delete key on my keyboard. I can also make a simple modification like triple clicking on this header. When I triple click, I can delete the abbreviation TBL to make the name more user-friendly. These are considered simple modifications. I'm going to close this form. I click on the Close command, and I don't want to save anything. I don't have much investment in this form, so I hit No. Method number 2 to create a form. And let's say I want to create a form that deals with Table Retailer. So I go to the Create tab, and I'll be using the second technique, which is answering some questions in a wizard. To do this, I click on Form Wizard. Like in case of a query, you have to select the source object. So if you click on the down pointing arrow and select Table Retailer, you would have selected the source object. Now it's time to select the fields you want to see in this form. You can select one by one, or you can select all of them in one go by clicking on the double right pointing arrow. When I click on this, I would have selected all the fields. Let's say you don't want one of the fields, like the fax field. I can move it back by clicking on the left pointing arrow. I don't want the address to field, so I move it as well. Now I'm ready to move to the next window. When I click on Next, here it asks me, how would you like the layout of this form to look like? Well, the best way to explore the layout, whether it's a columnar layout, a tabular, a datasheet, or a justified, is to click on each one of them and look at the preview box. I'll keep the default columnar, and then when I hit Next, I would have finished creating my form, and I want to give it a name, Clients. When I hit Finish, this form, unlike the previous tool, this form will open in Form View. When you create a form and you use the wizard, it opens in Form View. And in Form View, you can change the values, but you cannot change the design. If you wish to change the design, you will have to switch to another view, like the Layout view or the Design view. I created a form by using the Form tool, and I created this form by using the Form wizard. But in order to have full control on the design, I will create a form by using the Form design. I'm going to close this one, and then I go to the Create tab, and on the Create tab, I click on Form Design. When I click on Form Design, an empty grid opens. You might see to the right side a field list. I'm going to close it for now. A form in Design View has three sections. What you see right now is the main section called the Detail section. So I start first by revealing the two other sections by right-clicking on the Detail section, and from the right-click menu, I select Form Header and Footer. And when I select Form Header and Footer, an extra section is added above the Detail section, and another one is added below it. These are the three sections of a form. You can expand or collapse any one of these sections, like I'm selecting the horizontal bar saying Detail, and I hover over the border and I drag it down to expand the form header. I'm going to add some contents to the form header, and I'll be adding some contents to the Detail section. Anything you see on a form in Design View is called a control, and controls may come from three different sources. We have three tabs being added to the ribbon: the Design tab, the Arrange tab, and the Format tab. On the Design tab, I have a group called Controls, so this is the first source for adding controls. I can also add controls from the source table, as we'll be doing in the Detail section, and I can also create a calculated control, which we are not going to do in this basic tutorial about creating forms. Let's start adding a form header. Let's say I'm creating a form for the different orders, and I want to base it on table order item, so I want to create a nice label here at the top, and I create this label by selecting a label control. On the Design tab in the Control group, I click on the Label control, which is the capital and small a, and then when I move my mouse pointer over the form, I can click and drag to position my control. I can write, let's say, Order Details. I can deselect the control, click again, it turns to an orange border. Now I can format it the way I like, exactly as if I was working in Word. I click on the Format tab, and on the Format tab, I can select any formatting options I like. Now I finished creating my label. Should you wish to look at the form at this point, then to the lower right corner, I'm going to click on the Form view, and this is how my form looks like at this point. I want to continue building my form, so I click on Design View. In Design View, I want to go to the Detail section. This time I want to add controls from the source table. And to add controls from the source table, I have to bring the field from the source table. And how do I do this? I go to the Design tab. On the Design tab and to the right side, I click on Add Existing Fields. When I click on Add Existing Fields, a field list pane opens on the right side, but I don't see any contents until I click on Show All Tables. When you click on Show All Tables, now I can see the different tables in this database. Which table would you like to use as a base for this form? Well, I want to use the table order item. To the left side of each table, we have a little plus sign. This is an expand symbol. If I click on the little plus sign, it expands, and now I can see the different fields. How do I add the fields to the grid? Among the different ways, you can simply drag each field and drop it in the grid. But in this case, you will have to take care of aligning the fields together. But there is an easier way of adding the fields to the grid, which is simply double-clicking on each one of the fields. So if I double-click on each one, now I'm adding all the fields one by one. This technique is easy because it automatically aligns the fields and adjusts the vertical spacing between the different fields. The only problem is that it leaves a space above, and that's easy to fix. I want to select all the fields, so I can simply select one of them and hit Ctrl A to select all of them. I can select one of them and press Shift and click on the other ones, but easier, I can drag a selection rectangle that includes all of them. When you drag the selection rectangle around them, you would have selected all of them. Now I can move all of them simultaneously, and I'm moving them to the top of the details section. And to make my form look even better, then I want to reduce this space below the fields, so I select the form footer and then I drag it up. When I do this, I would have finished creating my form. I can always come back to Design View and make some fine-tuning. Let's close the field list. I'm done with it. And I want to switch view. I go to the Form view to look at my form at this point. I click on the Form View button. Then my form looks nice. I have the order detail ID. I have the order ID, the product, the quantity, the price paid, and the notes. And that's wonderful. If you want to make any further changes, you have to go back to Design View. The final thing I want to do in this form is to repeat what I did in a previous tutorial in a query. I want to multiply the quantity by the price, so I'll be creating a calculated field and I'll name it total. This field will multiply the quantity by the price, and to do this, I have to switch to Design View. I switch to Design View, and now I need to make some room in the Details section to add a new field. This new field needs somewhere to live in. This somewhere is a text box. I go to the Design tab, and I click on the text box control. When I click on the text box control, look at the mouse pointer. It looks different. It's holding something. All what you need to do is to click. One single click, and the text box control has been created. I need to create a label and a calculation. And I want you to look at the different labels at this point. All the labels are the captions of the fields from the tables, while all the value boxes show the developer name of the field. When you look at the label, this label doesn't change when you navigate in a form from one record to the other. That's the caption of the field. While if you look at the value box, these are where the values change, and that's why it shows the developer name of the field, which is replaced with a different value when you navigate in the form. Now let's create our label. I select the label box, and then I'll be typing, let's say, total, and I hit enter. Now I want to create my calculation, and I'll be doing the same exact thing I did in a query. I need two fields, and I need to multiply them, and I want to include each one of the fields in square brackets. I could do that in this tiny box, but easier than doing it in this tiny box, I want to open the property sheet. So I go up at the top to the right side of the Design tab and click on Property Sheet. The property sheet for this control opens, and in the property sheet I have different tabs. I click on the Data tab. And for the control source box, I'll be creating my calculation. When I create my calculation in the Data tab of the property sheet, I get the help of the IntelliSense list, which looks like what we do in Excel. So if I type an equal sign, and then I type an opening square bracket, and I start typing the developer name of the field SNG item quantity, SNG, and here you go. I don't have to continue typing. It pops up automatically. I hit tab. And then I want to multiply this one by another field called CUR item price. I type an opening square bracket and I type CUR, and sure enough, the name of the field pops up in the IntelliSense list. I hit tab. And I finish creating my calculation just by selecting from the IntelliSense list. Before I go back to Form View and see the result of my calculation, I want to format this new calculated control. So still in the property sheet, I click in the Format tab, and from here I want to format as currency, so I select from the list currency, and I'm done. Should you wish to adjust the number of decimal places, you can do that as well. I close the property sheet and I want to see the result of my calculated control. So I switch to Form View, and in Form View I see the total field, which is a calculated control in a form. In this tutorial, we learned how to create a basic form, either by using the Form tool, or by answering a set of questions in the Form wizard, or by having full control on the form and create it in Form Design in Design View. We also learned how to create a calculated control in a form by adding a text box, and then we type a label and we create the calculation in the value box. Instead of creating the calculation in the value box, we can make our life easier by displaying the property sheet.